millions of vulnerable Americans struggle to get reliable transportation to their medical appointments. That's why I started MedHall. Citi launched the Impact Fund to invest in both women and entrepreneurs of color like me so I can realize my vision and give everything I've got to my company and my community.
I got you.
For the love of people, for the love of community, for the love of progress. Citi.
Welcome to the PaleyFest Fall TV Previews. I'm Joe Otterson, and I'm delighted to be your host for this special conversation celebrating TNT's Road to the Top. Thanks to PaleyFest's official card and official sponsor Citi for helping make the event possible. Today, we are thrilled to welcome the members of the cast and creative team of Road to the Top. Joining us are Cody Rhodes and Brandy Rhodes, and executive producer and cast member Tony Khan. Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
Hey.
So first and foremost, I have to know, how did the show come about? Because you're all so incredibly busy with AEW. I'm just curious, like, what made you think, we're going to throw a reality show onto our plate as well?
I think, Tony, didn't that come from you? Like, as a kind of speculative thing of, hey, maybe we should do a reality show. Maybe it should be you guys.
Yeah, it was one of the first things we talked about. It was almost 3 years ago, over 2.5 years ago, when we were first talking about all the different AEW programming we could establish. Dynamite was the first show we focused on. And in looking to develop other shows, we talked about, well, we could do another wrestling show, which is now AEW Rampage. And we talked about potentially a reality show documenting this crazy adventure, this crazy journey that we've been on to launch AEW. And really, as Cody and Brandy have developed their careers both in the wrestling business and as executives and built a family, it just seemed like a great idea. And really, the reality show aspect of it, I think we talked about long before Cody and Brandy knew they were going to build a family. So it's been really fun for everyone.
I'm always pretty careful, Joe, with the origin stories on things. I botch them often because of the amount of times things are discussed. I would say Rhodes to the Top probably was born long before I ever knew about it, because Brandy actually met with Tony before me. Brandy met, maybe it was then. I'm just gonna say it was then. I've really taken to having cameras and lighting in the house and throughout this experience. They're good folks. It's a very, very authentic show.
Yeah, and so for Cody and Brandy, neither of you is a stranger to being on camera, but I'm curious. This to me seems like it'd be pretty different from being on Dynamite every week. So what was the experience like filming with having cameras in your house, all the time?
For me, the experience was, I think everybody's going to get the most authentic experience from me, because I was 7,000 weeks pregnant while people were poking and prodding me and in my space and in my face, and things were going wrong. And you can't, when you're that pregnant, you cannot fake anything, and you don't want to. You're just kind of there and in the moment. So I think there's a lot of, probably going to be a lot of editing around, because, TNT is it's not HBO. So it's going to be a lot of editing around, a lot of cursing, because I was just letting it fly. I became Andrew Dice Clay really quickly. So hopefully we can edit around some of that and still keep the authenticity, because there's some humor in that. I think a lot of people can relate to being in the dead of summer, 9 months pregnant. And that's where we were.
I really, it was fun because there's this big dichotomy between Cody at AEW, which is, I'm already so pretentious that I'm already speaking about myself in the third person, but Cody at AEW is a different person, I think, because this is my first time. I feel like Tony was born an executive, whereas this is my first time being in any type of management and leadership role. So every week I'm trying something new. I'm still trying to figure out my identity as a coach or a leader, as someone on the team. So the AEW side of me is different. And then when we got home, I could tell the crew was shocked at how truly immature I am. And I don't mean like immature, like drinking fraternity type of immature. I mean childlike immature. And the group of friends that they followed, like myself and Ricky Starks, I could tell they were really taken back, which I think hopefully makes for a very entertaining and fun show. But it's definitely two sides to the coin of who we are at AEW and who we are at home.
And Brandy and Tony, were either of you surprised by how immature Cody is, or?
I'm ready for the world to see what I've been talking about. There's a lot of things. That's part of the charm, though, of Cody, is I really don't think people know, he has childlike wonder is what I like to call it. And it's something that I feel like to be in a creative industry, you have to have that. So he's a professional wrestler. He's an actor. You have to be able to tap into that part of your mind, and he can just do it easier than most people. Let's say that.
Tony knows my secret, by the way, the most childlike thing I currently have going on in my life. I don't know, Tony, if
the He-Man collection. He's really, the He-Man and Skeletor collection. Absolutely. that is what's going on. Seriously, I mean, we, see it at work in terms of the things that make wrestling such a fun thing for kids, right? That same love for wrestling, that same love for life, for comics, for toys. I don't consider it immature, but I think it's great. But I'm sure it'll make great family entertainment. And so for me, I don't get to see that side of it at your house all the time, but at work, you really bring that energy and that spirit that made us all fall in love with wrestling when we were kids in the first place.
And then you've touched on this a bit, but of course the show is going to show not only your personal lives at home, but also your professional lives behind the scenes at AEW. So if you had to put a number on it, I mean, would you say it's about a 50-50 split in terms of what we're going to see on the show, or how much versus your personal life versus the wrestling side of it do you think we'll see on the show?
That's a good question. For me, it's different because I was at such a stage in my life. So I think what you're going to see from me is more of me trying to continue the professional side of my life, even though I think most people had expected long ago for me to take a chill and kind of take a little bit of a maternity leave and relax a little bit. I think it's called nesting. I don't understand it or like that. And I was really against the grain on doing that. So I kept showing up, wide as a submarine to Jacksonville and waddling around and trying to do work because that's what I wanted to do. But then of course there is the point at which, I finally do have to give in a little bit, but actually I don't want to give away too much. I don't know if it ever happened. I don't know if it ever happened that I gave in. I think you just have to watch the show and see what actually happens, how long I actually gave in to the hospital. It wasn't very long.
I think Brandy's kind of at the center of everything as far as it's a 50-50 split with perhaps me. And it's really cool to go behind the scenes at AEW and the access that Tony granted and to be able to see how it really moves. Because if you're a hardcore fan, how it really moves, especially in our company, we're so honest and fair and having a good time almost all the time. That's such a cool thing to see. But Brandy was in the center of all of it, in the chart, basically, because the pregnancy just you could not acknowledge this is a very pregnant woman who's choosing to be at work, but at any point she could give birth in Jacksonville. She could give birth in Atlanta, wherever we were. I think she's the thread that ties it all together on the Rhodes to the Top.
And a question from our official card, Citi. What are you most excited for viewers to get to experience and see with this show?
Tony, what are you most excited about?
I think that's a great question. It's a couple of things. I think it's the balance that you can't have one without the other. And it's exciting to see the balance of the work life and your family life, especially at such interesting times, not only the birth of your child, the birth of liberty and the miracle that is the beginning of your family, but also as we go through this really fascinating time doing shows through the pandemic, doing shows at Daly's Place, doing shows that at first were 25% capacity when we first started filming this show and then started to increase a bit. And then I think we documented our return to full crowds, and then we'll have footage of us going back on the road. And now this week we're filming at Daly's Place and we'll be back in front of the same fans we performed in front of for a long time. We had wrestling shows only in Jacksonville for over a year, where we really weren't able to travel, but the local fans provided, really, really great support for us. So to come back to Jacksonville, I think will be really cool. But seeing basically both sides of it, I think the wrestling company navigating the pandemic and Cody and Brandy as executives navigating these challenges at the same time as they're starting their family and going through something that many people would be able to relate to. At the same time, they're going through all these challenges at work that millions of fans want to see. So it's a really, really cool project, I think.
I'd actually say too, Joe, one thing I'm real excited about is I chose in the beginning of AEW to be on screen as the executive vice president, one of the executive vice presidents, and that's something that was actually, of course, happening off screen. That choice for the unindoctrinated there are folks who mistake me to a degree as having far more power than I actually have. And it will be very exciting for me to see people discover that Tony is the man and that Tony is the guy. It honestly, it's the first thing I said when I sat down for my very first one-to-one interview with Rhodes to the Top was Tony's the boss.
Yeah, and Cody, you kind of touched on this, the idea of unprecedented access, because for those who don't know, the world of professional wrestling for a very long time was very, very secretive. I mean, you didn't hear anything about the behind the scenes goings on of any professional wrestling organization until really fairly recently. So with that in mind, other than, Tony, seeing that Tony's the boss, was there anything you were really excited for fans to get to see in that terms of that behind the scenes stuff? And was there anything you were maybe hesitant to show people at this point?
Well, I think you're always, to a degree, probably hesitant. I mean, that you can play it safe, and playing it safe will only get you so far. But the AEW fan base is rooted in the super fan. It truly is. We're picking up fans left and right, new fans, casual fans, lapsed fans, all those things. But the super fan is our core base. And I think they'll really enjoy it. Wrestling. It seems so dramatic and so politicky when you read about it and get into it on that level. But when you see it actually how it functions and how professional wrestling is, yeah, it's definitely, for me, growing up in the industry where I used to get into literal 2 fights. I got into elementary school because somebody told me that wrestling wasn't real. And I was told, well, if that happens, you're supposed to punch them in the nose, which is not what you should tell any child today. So for me, it was definitely, I was a little trepidatious about it. But if you're going to go, you got to go all in. You really do. And that's a beautiful thing too about Tony being the executive producer, Brandy and myself being producers as well. If we felt like it was too much, it was an area where we were able to protect that. Talent this wasn't like the cameras were just on everybody. If this was something you didn't feel comfortable with, we made sure you weren't on it and you weren't seen. So we were able to still protect assets that we have creatively and talent wise. And we were able to dive into folks who are really all about it. I want the world to see what this is like.
Yeah, and of course, we're going to get to see a lot of AEW stars on the show. Was there anybody who was particularly excited to get to be showcased, not only on AEW's live weekly shows, but also on Rhodes to the Top?
The number one person who was super excited and family is extremely excited, QT Marshall.
No.
No, his mother is like, QT to her is
The Rock.
He's made Rock Johnson. So she's like, I knew you'd be on the TV show. You're a big star. She thinks he's got a spinoff. Maybe he'll get a spinoff.
God.
We'll see what happens there.
I think somebody who really dove in, they tried to play it cool, but they really dove in a positive way, was Ricky Starks. Mm-hmm. Ricky, he knew what this was. They put the cameras up and we just go. It wasn't a scene. It wasn't framed up in an artificial way. He helped build a majority of Liberty's furniture one day, and it's all documented. He also broke what I would consider probably the number one rule of reality TV. We were doing a party, and I think he pre-partied, maybe had a few too many drinks prior to filming, and it's just a golden episode, just because you can see me trying so hard to bring him back to earth. But Ricky dove in for people to see the newly crowned FDW champion, how motivated he is, how passionate he is, what he went through with his actual neck, and the friendly side of him. He really shines on screen. Him and 10 of the Dark Order have a really fun buddy element to them that I think is just cute. I thought they did really great.
Yeah, those guys did extremely well, and I also thought, as you alluded to, that it was really nice to be able to have Stark sink his teeth into something while he was out injured, and it really gave him not more than a sense of purpose. It gave him really, I think, a good feeling at a time when he was probably pretty antsy and nervous about his injury. And he got to have some fun and, not only stay occupied, but really do something that'll live on and show another side of his personality. And so I think his silver lining of the injury was that he was able to really focus on Rhodes to the Top and during a period where he was out for a few months.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Brandy, you'd mentioned family a little while ago, and Cody, I know your family has been featured a little bit here on not only AEW TV, but in past, probably like wrestling angles on different shows. But Brandy, I think your family is involved in the show to a degree, right?
They are, yeah.
So, I mean, I just have to know, what was that like? I mean, because I would imagine, like, just trying to explain to your family, yes, I'm a pro wrestler, I'm on this insane weekly show, but now also, hey, I want you guys to be part of this reality show that I'm doing. I mean, what was that like, getting your family involved in this project?
It actually helped me see. So first of all, to set it up, if anybody is at all familiar with my dad, who's pretty visible on social media,
Otis.
He's a huge AEW fan. So much so that I've had to start telling him to stop buying merchandise and stop wearing it everywhere because he's got a target on him. Like, people in the stores just come up to him and start talking about AEW because he's head to toe. I mean, the hat, the shirt, the Nightmare Family jacket, like Nightmare Family shoes. He's all decked out all the time. So wrestling is an easy sell for my family. They love it. They've always loved it. So they're happy that this is the direction that their daughter's taken. At the same time, I wasn't sure how they would feel about the reality stuff. Oh my goodness, they're all about it. My brother had outfits planned and he's wearing like weird hats and sunglasses that I've never seen before. My dad, of course, is in his AEW gear. My mom actually starts to get a little bit of a diva attitude, which I kind of like for her. I want that for my mom. She kind of a couple of times was like, well, they filmed Michelle and they didn't film me. Why was that? And I was like, oh, well, I didn't know you really wanted to be filmed, Michelle being Cody's mom. So we might end up with a little grandma heat at some point.
And my mom and sister, it's weird. My family was on really terrible behavior for they were really, I don't know if this is the term anymore, but just really kind of egomaniacal.
We started calling his sister Teal Mariah.
Yeah, they were really, it was funny. It was funny to see, especially in scenes with me, but someone who really shined from my family that I thought, oh my gosh, he gets what this is and he's being real with it. And just, again, the first word in the game is professional wrestling. Dustin, this is a whole new aspect. You got to see something a lot of people don't see. Dustin does a training class every week at TV. It's like his favorite thing. And some people who get there a little later in the day, myself included, I don't even see what he's up to, but to see a little bit of him training as a coach and move into that portion of his career, Dustin I don't give him enough credit. He was really good and real, a good sounding board for me at a unique time that we were filming this.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, have to talk about the fact that, so Brandy, you found out you're pregnant while filming the show. You already mentioned you were very, very pregnant while filming the show. I mean, if you could just kind of tell me what was that like? And did having the cameras there just make it that much more surreal? Like, oh my God, I'm having a baby and it's basically on television.
Honestly, I didn't really, the moment that it really clicked for me that I'm having a baby is when I was in the hospital and I didn't even think I was in labor. And they said, you're going to have a baby in a couple hours. Yep. That's when life got really real. And that's when like your blood runs cold a little bit and you're like, good Lord, like what? I know I have everything, but I'm not ready for this. Until then, it was such amazing but strange experience to have something living inside of you. It's something I didn't think I was ever going to do in my life. So a lot of it is just, it's just so bizarre until the moment comes that you actually meet this person. Because at the time, it really feels like whatever's happening is maybe in your head. Like there's not really a person inside of me. That movement or thing I'm feeling, maybe it's something I ate, I don't know. And then you see them and you're like, wow, that's incredible. So yeah, during the show though, I'll be honest with you. I showed my ass the entire time because you only get one time to do this. If you're going to get pregnant, I don't believe I'm going to have another baby.
I don't know.
I'm saying that, but
I don't know.
Once I found out I was like, this is my one chance to just completely show my ass, be a jerk. No one's going to say anything to me because I'm pregnant. And he fought me the whole time. Like you can't just say whatever you want. Yes, I can. I'm pregnant. You can't just do that. Yes, who's going to stop me? I'm pregnant. Like that was it.
That was happening before she was pregnant. I play good cop. We're on the same law enforcement squad, but Brandy is a little bold. I don't know.
Brandy's really bold.
Season 2, it might happen again. You never know.
No.
We have a lot of sex, Joe.
Hey, no.
And kudos to you for that as well. But just obviously, so you get being new parents, but then also having a weekly, live show, and you're going to have 2 shows, on TNT pretty soon. I mean, what kind of chaos is your life like right now? Because I have to imagine it's just insane. I had to imagine it was insane before, but now while also being new parents, I mean, what does that add to the dynamic?
So, big question that they kept asking me on Rhodes to the Top, and I talked about it with Dustin, I talked about it with Tony, is that they really wanted to get into the thought of how much stuff we have going on. Dynamite, for example, the heart and soul of what we do. And then Tony bringing another show to TNT, then moving to TBS with Rampage, and that getting ready to happen. In addition to that, Go Big Show, which is about to enter its 2nd season. I leave in like 20 minutes, it seems like, to go there. And after that, it's just, and Rhodes to the Top, of course, this is all happening. I don't know how we've been able to really do it, but we have. I've been really happy with I don't get to see my friends as often as I'd like. There's not as much like social hangout time anymore, but really, I'm 35 or 36.
36.
I'm 36. So this is the time of my life. This is crazy to have all these opportunities. And I spent so long trying and the brass rings and all that stuff. And to finally, this has been one of the best 3-year runs of my life. I don't want to get emotional about it, but this is absurd. If it ended tomorrow, what a ride,
Well, let's hope it doesn't.
It won't though. I got to raise liberty.
For me, it's very true. People have said forever and ever and ever to me, when you have kids, it's going to change you. It's going to change you. And I'm just kind of like, whatever. But it's changed me in the best way because I am a very high stress person. I've got a lot of good qualities that are actually terrible qualities in that. Like I answer every text that happens. If the phone rings and I think I kind of recognize the number, I have to pick it up. If there's an email, it has to be answered as soon as I can.
If you only kind of recognize it, it's usually spam.
Right.
I found that the ones that you partially recognize are the least.
The ones that are important. Like it's terrible. But at any rate, with having liberty now, all that kind of like that extra stress, anxiety just kind of has melted away from me because at the end of the day, there's nothing like a newborn screaming in your face. Like that takes precedence of everything. They just grab you by the throat and they're like, you are listening to me right now.
Literally by the throat right now. She's going through a phase where she reaches at your jugular and grabs you here. Yeah. So like she's trying to choke slam you.
I say she's setting up the choke slam. Exactly.
She doesn't have a grip yet.
Goozle is a cute word.
Goozle. That's right. She goozle. Yeah, goozle. Yep. Oh.
What do you think it is though that makes Rhodes to the Top different than other reality shows out there right now?
I would defer to the executive producer. I
think it's a perfect combination of wrestling that really the fans are going to want to see but also a family show and a modern, new kind of family. And so I think it's very different than other wrestling reality shows there have been, because I think there'll be more backstage at AEW, and it's such an interesting time in the wrestling business through the pandemic and navigating the challenges of the pandemic. And at the same time as Cody and Brandy are starting their family, and to see something like that, I think, yes, there have been reality shows where people start a family. There have even been reality shows where we see wrestlers and their families. But to see something at such an interesting time about, two people that worked so hard in the wrestling business, it's such an interesting company. It's such an interesting time that we filmed all this stuff and have continued to film all this stuff and will continue to film stuff. It's one of the most interesting times in the wrestling business. And I think that's one of the reasons wrestling fans will find it really fascinating, because the events that have transpired pertaining to All Elite Wrestling over the last few years have been, I think, some of the most newsworthy and significant developments in wrestling in the last 2 decades. So it's a great time to be a wrestling fan and to see how a lot of this stuff went down, and to see what it's like behind the scenes in this company that has really taken wrestling, frankly, by storm, and become a #1 show in our time slot repeatedly now, and built a great audience in a very short amount of time. It'll be really interesting to see all those things. So it's a show about a family of executives, and a show about those executives working at a startup company in a sport, an industry that really captivates millions of imaginations.
Yeah, and I mean, Tony, you touched on this, but I mean, yeah, the AEW brand, I mean, has just exploded from the time guys came on the scene. It was in like late 2018, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was officially, I think, early 2019. But to your point, the first week, New Year's Day 2019, I think, is when we announced this.
Yeah, so I mean, just like you said, I mean, just absolutely exploded. A hit weekly show. You're going to have another weekly show coming up here soon. You've got so much going on right now. So then how do you see Rhodes to the Top helping to expand and build on the AEW brand going forward in the next 5
Should
years,
introduce
whatever?
lots of new fans to AEW, people that would want to watch a show, a reality show, a family show that might not necessarily follow the wrestling business. And I think they're going to inevitably be a number of people whose first introduction to AEW, and in some cases their first introduction to professional wrestling, will be watching the show and seeing what they see. And it should and will create new fans for wrestling, and also people who've seen a bit of wrestling. This could expand their love. They could grow new interest for Cody and Brandy, Dustin, Ricky Starks, Vance, number 10 of the Dark Order, all these fascinating people they see on the show, but most of all, Cody and Brandy. And people should become invested in their success, their family, and watch them grow, watch your family grow, and watch AEW grow.
They're not going to become invested in MJF though, right?
No, not much.
Max is such a lunatic. Joe, I don't know if you know Max that well. I mean, in addition to him being like the biggest rising star in wrestling, Max really, it's only a few people might even know, and I don't think I'm one of them, know who Max actually is. He is very Rowdy Piper in that he is almost always on, or that's just him. But no one was meaner to this crew, was more just in their face than Max. And I was glad about that. In a secret way, I thought, you know what, if anyone was going to be rude to these extra cameras and these folks, Max really let him have it. Just absolutely. You need a little of that in the locker room. You need it. And Max is leading the charge. I don't even like calling him a heel, because he's just naturally, that is who Max is. And I think he's been like that since he was a little, kid with his star parents on the Rosie show.
Real bad guy. Really a terrible person.
He's a bad dude.
There have been so many times where you're like, off the clock and the show's over and there's kids around, or, family, friends, and he'll insult them and say something really mean, make the kids cry. And I've seen it over and over and over and over again, making kids cry, inappropriate times too.
Tony had to fix one of these incidents one time. We had I'm not going to say who. There was a young man who was teared up over his interaction with Max, and Tony stepped in a very fatherly way and fixed it. Made him shake hands. My gosh.
I was like, it was not an appropriate time to be mean to this poor kid who came to visit us. And it was like, he's got a real sense that he has to be on all the time. And I don't know if it's even just, I think it's really just himself. Yeah. And so, just really a terrible person.
There it is. Great wrestler, though. Great wrestler.
Yeah. I also know what it says about me. I'm laughing at the idea of him just insulting children at all times, but that's another story for another day.
Bless him.
Unfortunately, all that is all the time we have, but I want to remind everyone that Rhodes to the Top premieres with back-to-back episodes on September 29th on TNT following AEW Dynamite. I want to thank you for joining us for the special PaleyFest Fall TV Previews conversation with the members of the wonderful cast and creative team behind TNT's Rhodes to the Top. Thanks to PaleyFest official card and official sponsor Citi. You can learn more about the Paley Center by visiting paleycenter.org. Thank you all so much for being here. I love what you guys are doing. Please keep doing it for a long time. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.